Hey everyone, it's Amanda. Welcome back to my channel. As you can see today, I'm not alone. I'm joined by these two lovely humans.
Hi!
Hi! Introduce yourselves for anyone who might not be familiar with your channel.
My name is Becky.
And my name is Kelsey.
And we have a channel called TheSorryGirls.
And we do DIY and room makeovers.
Yes, so I've enlisted their help because, as some of you may know, I recently bought and moved into a new condo, and I was super overwhelmed with the whole decorating thing, so I thought, who better to ask to help me out than these two? But, of course, we had to throw in a little challenge because I had to make it hard for them. So over on my video, this one, I'm going to be showing you guys how to draw and design your own seamless wallpaper designs. I made two designs, one for Becky, one for Kelsey. And over on their channel,
we have a series called Style Selected where we take a space and we each make a design, and this time they will be themed around our different wallpapers. And then Amanda has to pick which design she likes best, and we're gonna give her a makeover.
Are you guys excited?
I'm excited and nervous, but like I'm so excited to work with wallpaper. I think it's the one thing we haven't done, and I'm so excited.
Yes, so if you guys want to see which wallpaper design I chose and which design of theirs I chose and how this space ended up looking, be sure to go check out their video. But in the meantime, I'm going to show you guys how to make these wallpaper designs, so let's get to it. Okay, so the first step is for you to sketch out any ideas that you have for the patterns that you want to create for your wallpaper. You can either do this on paper, or in my case, I'm going to be using my iPad on Procreate. I'm just using a regular pencil tool. I had a couple in mind. I was thinking we could do a constellation pattern because it kind of matches like my bullet journal theme from a while back, as well as a fun tropical print because I've been seeing a lot of tropical print wallpapers. I feel like that's kind of like a trendy thing right now. So I wanted to come up with my own version. I think those two are the ones that are sticking out to me and the ones that I want to actually create. I'm just going to sketch out various different versions of each design. So for example, with the tropical leaf print, I'm going to play around with different style of leaves, whether I want to do like palm leaves or banana leaves and whatnot. You can also play around with like the color palettes and the placement of the leaves. And this is just for you to come up with a bunch of different thumbnail ideas, and then you can eventually pare it down to see what you like. Something to keep in mind when you're coming up with your wallpaper pattern ideas is that it works best when you have smaller repeated elements within the square of your design. So for example, for my tropical leaf design, instead of doing one big leaf, I'm doing multiple leaves that are different shapes, different sizes, rotated. And that way, when we make it seamless, everything kind of blends together easily instead of doing, you know, one big leaf that's repeated multiple times. Okay, so once you've sketched out all your ideas and you've narrowed it down to the one that you want to make, this is when we're gonna finalize the actual design and, you know, actually draw what is going to be on the walls. As I mentioned, I'm making two designs, one for Becky and one for Kelsey. The process is pretty much going to be the same for both of them. There is just slight differences for when I'm actually drawing it. So we're going to start off with the tropical leaf wallpaper. The Procreate brush that I'm using is called Ink Bleed, and I really like how this one has a texture to it. It's not a solid sharp line. It kind of has, like the name suggests, an ink bleed to it. So you get these kind of jagged, rough lines that makes it look very hand-drawn. And basically I'm just bringing the brush size up, and then for the leaves, since there's brush sensitivity on the iPad, I'm able to press down harder for when I want a thicker line and then just kind of flick out when I want it to become thinner. And that's how I'm making all of these individual leaves. I start out with the stem and then add the leaves all around it. And the sketch underneath kind of helps me to create the shape of the leaf that I want. You don't have to worry about the color of your brush stroke for now. We can change all of that up later. But as you can see, I'm mostly worried about drawing all of the elements that are going to be in the little square wallpaper design. Something else to keep in mind is to make sure that you're drawing every element in full. So in my case, I'm making sure that I can see the whole leaf. You also don't have to worry about the exact placement and rotation of the elements because we're going to bring it into Illustrator later and fix all of that up. The main thing is to make sure that you have all of your illustrations down. Now I'm going to show you guys the other wallpaper, which is the Constellation Wallpaper, before we bring everything into Illustrator and make it seamless. It's pretty much the same steps, but the only thing different is the tools that I'm using to create the design. So obviously I want to have a darker background because it's going to be a night sky. So I'm going to fill it out with this dark gray. I'm using the pencil tool to just roughly sketch out the main constellation formations that I want to have on the design. I have the Big Dipper, and then I actually thought of the idea of using the horoscope constellation formations for my family. So there's one for myself, my mom, my sister. I'm a Gemini, so you can see that there's like the Gemini constellation formation. Instead of the ink bleed tool that we used for the leaf wallpaper design, I'm actually going to be using the tool called Technical Pen because I just want a more cleaner graphic look. And then I'm using this to create all of the main star dots on the constellation. So you can see I add all of the dots on the corners of the constellation, and I also add in some stars here and there, so it's a mix between circles and stars. You can change up the size of the stars and the dots as well. A little tip if you're looking to create straight lines on Procreate, if you draw your line and then hold your pen for a little bit, Procreate will automatically straighten it for you. Right now I'm doing that for all of the constellations and it's coming together. You can see all of the constellations. Again, just like the leaf one, we're making sure to draw all of the elements, so none of the elements are going off the canvas. So the final thing that I'm doing right now for this wallpaper design is to fill in all of the empty spaces with a bunch of different stars and dots so it looks more like a galaxy. I actually really like the way both designs turned out. They are both very different, but it's going to be hard to decide between the two. To wrap things up before we bring these into Illustrator and finish it all off, for your designs, obviously you don't need to do the same designs as me. The main thing is to remember to make sure that you're drawing all of your elements in full, don't cut anything off, and then also make sure that it's a pattern that would look good repeated. On Illustrator, we're basically going to be making sure that these patterns that we make are seamless so that when you put the wallpaper up, you don't see the edges of the pattern and it won't look like tiled. It'll just look like one big wallpaper that's meant to be, you know, filling the wall. So anyways, let's bring these over into Illustrator. So I'm exporting both of these images to a JPEG and we're going to be bringing them into my laptop. When you open up a new artboard, you're going to want to make it the size of whatever image requirements that the custom wallpaper website you're using requires. I'm using CS6 because it's really easy to just upload the image of your pattern and they'll create the wallpaper for you. And on their website, they say they require 3,600 pixels by 3,600 pixels. So that's what I'm doing. Now I'm going to be dragging in the JPEG image of the elements that we drew on Procreate. Once you've dragged the image into your Illustrator workspace, it's time to turn this image into vectors. For any of you guys who don't know the difference between pixels and vectors, a standard image, which is like JPEG and PNG, uses pixels, and what that is that when you zoom in, you'll see all of the tiny little squares. But with vectors, no matter how far you zoom in, you won't see those little squares that are faded off. Illustrator actually has a built-in tool that makes it really easy for you to turn any image into vectors. It's called Image Trace. So if you click Image Trace, I'm using the black and white setting because basically all of the elements on my design are going to be the same color, but if you have multiple colors, you might want to use the color setting. And then here where it says threshold, you can see that there's a sliding tool where it says less and more. And if you play around with this sliding tool, this will basically determine what gets turned into vectors. Vectors can be kind of confusing if you haven't had any experience with them, but it's really important to know that since the vectors are clean lines, it makes it easier if your design is just, you know, either line art or one solid color. Unlike in regular images where you can have like a fade or ombre of colors, with vectors, since it's clean lines, you're gonna want it to be like solid, bold graphic prints. Once you have your sliding threshold, you can play around with this. I think I'm going to have it around 150. You press the trace button and it'll load up for you. And then as you can see, it turned it black and white because that's the setting that I chose. And then once you press expand up here, you'll see that all of our image has been converted into these vector points. The way image trace works on Illustrator is that it'll create vector shapes for everything, so even the negative space. So I'm going to be taking out this white background and just deleting that. And as you can see, now I just have these elements that can be moved around. So if you use this white arrow tool, you can actually edit each individual element. And I'm playing around with the rotation, I'm playing around with the size. It can also change the color of the elements if I want as well. And now this is where you can actually make sure that the elements go off the borders. In fact, I would actually recommend you do so. The main priority now is to make sure that the whole square is filled up with your pattern. So this is kind of going to be hard to explain, but the premise is that any elements that show up on this side that are kind of outside of the border are going to have to show up exactly at the same position on the opposite side that it's facing. And the same for the top and the bottom, so any elements that are at the top, we're going to want it to be in the same location at the bottom and vice versa. When you're doing this, remember that from left to right is your x-axis and from top to bottom is your y-axis. And since our artboard is square and it's 3600 pixels wide, we're going to have to move these elements 3600 pixels to the opposite side. We're going to start off with the left side, so I'm using the selection tool and selecting anything that is outside of the art box. And then I'm pressing Command C. I'm on a Mac, by the way, so it would be Control C for a PC, and then Command F or Control F on a PC to paste it right on top. And now we're going to have to move it directly across the x-axis to the opposite side. So click Transform in the top left corner, and then where it says X value, you're going to add 3600. So as you can see, that moved it directly across and it's going to be perfectly in line. We're going to do the same thing for the top, so select anything that is outside the art box on the top, and then on the Y value, you're going to add or subtract 3600, depending on whether you're moving from top to bottom or bottom to top. As you can see, when I copied and pasted the elements and moved it across, you're probably going to end up with some overlap or some elements crossing into each other. Make sure you're only altering the elements that are within the art box. So for example, I might have to make one of the leaves smaller or move it over so that it doesn't interfere with the ones that are around the edge. So once you're happy with how your pattern looks, it should be completely filling up the artboard, and you should have elements that are going off the artboard as well. You're going to select all of it with your selection tool and then group it all together. So right click and press group. Next, we're going to have to make a square the exact same size as the artboard. So if you hold M on the keyboard and then double click, the rectangle tool should pop up and you're going to want to input the exact dimensions. In my case, I have to do 3600 pixels by 3600 pixels. So now you have a square that's the exact same size. I'm moving the square over top of the artboard, and if you want to make sure that it's exact, click Transform in the top, and then I'm inputting 1800 pixels for the X location and 1800 pixels for the Y location. So the size of the square is 3600, cut that in half, 1800, and if you put that in as the X and Y location, it'll be directly centered and where it's supposed to be. Now is when you can decide what background color you want to have. So I just want a plain white one for this, so I'm setting this to white, right-clicking, and then sending it backwards. And now you should see that the leaves will be on top of this white background. We're almost done, I promise. We are just going to need a second square, so I'm just copying that square, pasting it, and then making sure it's, again, right in the center of the artboard, so making sure that the X and Y location is both 1800 pixels. And this should be right on top of everything. So you shouldn't be able to see your pattern right now. And then I'm going to select everything, right click, and then press Make Clipping Mask. So this will crop out any of the things that are outside of that square. So this is actually pretty much done, but I do want to test it out to make sure that it actually is seamless. I'm going to select everything, hold Alt, and then drag it over. That just makes a copy of whatever you're dragging. That way you have your original vectors and elements on your artboard. So let's say you wanted to switch up the colors, you could still edit it. And then on this copied version over here, we're going to select everything, click Pathfinder, and press Crop. And then now you can actually drag it into your swatches tool and use that as a swatch for whatever pattern. So we're gonna test it out and see how it looks like seamless. I'm making a large rectangle, just clicking on my brand new swatch. And there you go. As you can see, now we have a seamless pattern. It actually looks so good. I'm so excited to see what it'll look like on the wallpaper. But yeah, I can tell that there's no seams, so that means we've done it right. All of the hard work was worth it. I know it was a little confusing, but when you see it all together, it's quite satisfying. By the way, I did the same thing with the Constellation Wallpaper, and now we are going to just export it and upload it to Society6. So in order to do that, I'm going to create a brand new file that's the exact same size, 3600 by 3600, and then you're going to copy this little square swatch, paste it into the brand new artboard, and then export it into a JPEG image. I uploaded mine onto the Society6 website. They make it really easy. They do all of the behind the scenes work into actually making it into wallpaper. And then you can measure the size of your wall and order your own wallpaper. So we're finally done making our custom seamless wallpaper designs. Here's the tropical leaf wallpaper, and here is the Constellation wallpaper. I am so excited to see what Becky and Kelsey are going to do with these. All right, everyone, so we have our two finished wallpaper designs, and I've assigned one to each of them. So Becky over here, you are getting the Constellation Wallpaper.
Okay, I'm excited.
It's a challenge. And then you are getting the tropical black and white print.
Very
Got
cool.
Okay, so if you guys want to see their designs based on these wallpapers, again, go check out their video over on their channel. And also, if you are interested in either of the prints and the wallpapers, I'm actually going to link the Society 6 page down below so we can be like wallpaper twins.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that.
All right, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below, subscribe to them, and I will talk to you in my next video. Bye!
Bye.